What's up guys, KPlaysHere here. Today I'm going to be asking a much more direct question than I did at the beginning of my last video. How badly did Alatreon whoop you until you finally returned the favor? And did you love him or hate him for it? For me, well, I make it no secret that this is one of my all-time favorite fights in the series, but if my memory serves me right, I know quite a few people would have disagreed with me back when it was added in Iceborne. Am I about, 4 or so years too late on the Alatreon unfair or awesome debate? Yeah, but with Wilds on the horizon, I think it's a good topic worth revisiting, because, well, I want him back. Or at least another fight like him, because like Jan Kutku, I feel that Alatreon was also a great teacher. Instead of showing you the basics you'll need later on though, he makes sure that you've learned the lessons you should have already picked up along the way. Very, very painfully. Let's talk about it. Take yourself back to 2020. Most of you were probably riding high with your Raging Brachydios gear depending on the weapon type of choice. Raw and Blast was, as you could say, all the rage back then, and there was little to nothing you couldn't just steamroll with that one trusty gear set. But then Alatreon dropped. Alatreon added rules to its fight. Some people saw those rules and said, nah, I'm just gonna ignore those and keep steamrolling. What's the worst that could happen? And you know what Alatreon said back? Oh, you don't want to listen? Okay. No, it's fine. Go ahead. No, do what you're doing. I'm gonna do what I'm doing. Watch this. Yep, like it or not, the state of Monster Hunter Enlightenment known as Getting Good was absolutely necessary to some extent if you wanted to clear this wall. Bare minimum, you could stick with your all builds, but with the catch that you could not cart, unless it was just to those one-shot Eschaton Judgments. Something you'll notice is impossible to pull off in a group, which means that your best chances would also be to solo this bad boy. In a way, this actually made the fight more manageable because you'd be the only target and Alatreon's wild elemental moves would be less random. The catch though, is that you're the only target. In an arena you can't leave, with an extremely powerful Elder Dragon focused on nothing but tearing you apart with one of the most diverse and dangerous movesets in the whole game. And yet, that's where I find the beauty in this design. You see, even with all those mechanics you have to juggle the whole fight, and as non-stop relentless as Alatreon can be, every single move, no matter what weapon you use, leaves an opening and an appropriate response for you to take. Once you start to see, it's like you can achieve this crazy flow state of taking turns. You Alatreon. Each one of you hoping that the other messes up the order so balance can shift and advantages can be taken. I could go into literally every example since I've fought of them so many times, but this isn't a guide. With 3 modes, a flight and grounded variation for each, and 5 different sets of elemental attacks, we'd probably be here for like an hour. If you do want to see someone give a full rundown though, I suggest going to watch fellow YouTuber and hunting horn user Torpedo Soup's amazing in-depth Alatreon guide. I'll link that in the description, it's full of great info. Even helped me improve some of my own Alatreon runs. Here though, I'm only going to be talking about a few details to make my point clear. Let's start with those rules I mentioned earlier. On top of surviving the fight and taking out your quest target, you go into Alatreon hunts with 2 objectives. Weakening the Eschaton Judgment so it doesn't insta-kill you, and stopping Alatreon from changing elemental modes from the one you hopefully prepared for to the one that would render your weapon's element useless. That preparation mainly comes down to the weapon you bring. Something with fire for ice mode or ice for fire mode. Dealing enough elemental damage would eventually topple Alatreon, weakening Eschaton Judgment to the point where you can heal through the constant damage. Breaking its horns while it's in dragon mode will stop it from cycling to the element you don't want. Difficulty of the actual fight aside, this was a relatively simple approach if you think about it, but depending on who you ask, it was absolutely unfair, to the point where, and I kid you not if you weren't aware when it happened, people review bombed the whole game solely because of this one fight, and even started a petition to get Capcom to nerf it. Crazy, I know. Alatreon was literally manhandling some hunters so bad that it caused real-life emotional damage and broke the 4th wall to cause community backlash. The reason for this was probably that no fights, much less fights this up there in difficulty, required a specific set of gear and plan of action to successfully complete at this point. If for whatever reason you didn't want to follow the steps laid out, well, the game kinda hard walls you at that point. Take that how you will. My 2 cents though, well, this may be a bit of a hot take, but isn't this exactly what Monster Hunter should be? Not the insta-kill stop by DPS checks part, but the general idea of adapting your gear and playstyle to different challenges. With all the Raging Brachy, all the time approach being taken into the game at that time, especially after just giving us Master Rank Kulfdroth and the Safi build-a-weapon system to increase variety. This fight may have been Capcom's slightly heavy-handed curveball to push players to broaden their strategy some. Was it the best way to do that? Some might say yes, some might say no, but nobody can say that it didn't work. I personally wouldn't mind more fights designed with a similar thought process in the future. I mean, ironically, if Alatreon came out in Wilds instead or if Iceborne, I feel like people would have much less of an issue with it, seeing as the weapon swapping mechanic would be the perfect answer to the whole elemental phase changing thing. You can't really complain that the fight doesn't let you use the weapon you want if you can just keep the weapon you want in your back pocket after you get that topple. The more controversial part of the fights aside though, what I really appreciate about 5th Gen Alatreon is the way it both forces and rewards good gameplay. Positioning, noticing tells, learning hit zones, appropriate reactions, knowing the details about the fight's multiple stages, all of those soft skills are tested to their limits here. As I said before, even though it has a lot of them, every single attack Alatreon can throw at you has an answer to it, as long as you know how to identify and respond. For example, during the lightning rain, the particle effects will tell you whether the boats will radiate out from Alatreon or start further out and close in. There are safe spots to stand during both variations where you can attack freely. The explosive rings that it could throw out in fire mode leave a huge opening if you can make your way into the circle instead of being pushed outwards. Frost Breath attacks are a dream for hunters that want to apply offensive pressure, because if you have on a health augment, you can totally ignore the damage and attack back however you like. Physical attacks are probably the easiest to avoid and counter, but if you get hit by these, they'll turn off the elemental damage you need, because they all inherently carry Dragon Blight. These are just a few of the basic examples, and there are a ton more. Things can get even deeper though, like when it comes to flight. Alatreon will always fly in each elemental phase at a certain health threshold, and it can be a pain whether you're playing casually and really need that time to hit the elemental topple, or you're speedrunning and can't afford to waste those extra seconds. You could use the smoke bomb strategy to lose aggro and lure it out of the sky, wait until it isn't enraged to get an opportunity to flinch shot it to the ground, or if you're really calculating, time the elemental topple right when you need to knock it out of the air. And speaking of that topple, there's also the question of how you want to approach that as well. Contrary to what you may think with all the talk about Alatreon being weak to elements, they're actually not all that important when it comes to actually dealing damage in this fight. Alatreon has extremely good raw hit zones, while the elemental ones are just kinda average. This means that you technically only need just enough element to consistently get that one topple per phase. But how you want to take that fact is up to you. Maybe you have trouble with that consistency so you want to run extra element, or you just like the extra knockdowns that you get from toppling 2 to 3 times during a fight. Maybe you're trying to push for a good time so you can set that element down to the bare minimum and focus on increasing attack power instead. This can result in a crazy amount of build creativity and practice. I put together tons of different sets on my quest for a sub 10 kill time, just to tweak the variables just right for the best possible results. Whichever way you do it though, Alatreon still isn't letting you off easy because of those horns. It only has 2 to break, you see, meaning that if the fight goes around for a 3rd cycle of Dragon Mode without you getting that kill, it's now free to change elemental modes at will. In other words, when Escalaton Judgment time comes around past this point, you're kinda cooked. Or frozen. Yeah, you don't have to speedrun the fight, but you can't exactly kick back and relax with this soft time limit on top of the usual quest timer. All in all though, I love this fight, and I could talk about its merits for testing hunter skills for ages. I might know a lot about my main weapon and the game in general, but I'm no world record speedrunner or anything. But for me, Alatreon is a great sparring partner that gives me no choice but to stay sharp. If I'm not on my toes with my reaction time, I get punished. If I do what I need to on the offensive, it shows. Following a good plan is usually rewarded with good results at the end of the hunt, but even then sometimes the AI can just say no to what I wanted to do and it's up to me to react on the fly. Again, while some of the things the Alatreon hunt asks of you are somewhat mandatory to not lead to an eventual unavoidable nuke, they're almost all present in the entire rest of the game in some form. Nearly every monster has different elemental weaknesses, specific tells to watch out for in their movements, or phase changes that you may need to approach in a specific way. Some might call it utter BS when it comes to the Alatreon fight, but I call it a slightly changed flavor of pure undiluted Monster Hunter at its finest. In short, hashtag Alatreon for Wilds, who's with me on that? Whether it's for the sake of some challenge, or just maybe to watch the world burn just a little bit if it starts another community divide? Nah, I'm kidding. Mostly. But seriously, what do you guys think about this fight or fights like it? Would you like to see more in the future? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Honestly, all this talk about Alatreon has me wanting to give my old sparring buddy another visit sometime soon. Maybe this time around I might throw in a little something to keep the fight fresh though. Until then though, this has been another KPlays, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.